This one is from r/entitled people. Seriously, shopper blocks store aisle and then has the nerve to yell at me. This happened a few days ago, so it's fresh in my memory. I'm lucky enough to not have a lot of these stories, but this encounter stuck out to me because of how sudden and jarring it was. Context: I, 24, bi and accepting any pronouns, though I present as female, work at a TJ Maxx/home goods combo store, and my main job is either unpacking boxes in the back or retrieving the trolleys from the corrals. On occasion, however, if there are no boxes to be processed and it's too hot to get trolleys, I get very easily overheated, and my managers are more than all right with me helping out in other areas when it's hot. I'll usually take the bins of pet stuff from the back room and one at a time go through each bin, putting toys and treats on the hooks and laying out pet beds and such, because I don't want to block traffic too much, and because there are 3 or 4 aisles total that make up the department, requiring me to move back and forth a lot anyway. I don't like to roll the bins into the aisles themselves, and instead keep them under one of the tables we have on display, or otherwise out of the way if the table gets sold. But generally, when I'm working the pet department, I'm doing a lot of back and forth through the aisles, and I acknowledge that traffic can be high sometimes, so I always preface my movements with a polite "sorry," "excuse me," "pardon me," etc. If I ever find that I have to accommodate shoppers, and 99% of the time they're more than happy to step off to the side, often apologizing in turn, to which I always reply that it's no problem, I'll only be sec. I've never had any issues with this before, as I'm typically a very non-confrontational person, and am generally easy to get along with unless you attack me personally. Cue our scene a few days ago. The cast: me, the part-time employee just trying to do my job. EL, entitled lady. MH, my hero, the person who stood up for me. I was putting away some pet beds and came around the corner to head back to the bin to grab more stuff to put out, and I see this person, EL, with her cart in the dead center of the aisle, perpendicular to another aisle, therefore blocking the entire T-section that just so happened to be the center point of my traffic. She's sitting on her phone, and I assume she's just stopped for a moment to send a quick text, so I politely wait behind her for a minute or two to give her time to finish her text and move on. After waiting for what seemed like a reasonable amount of time, I cleared my throat gently to get her attention, as I didn't just want to shove by her or tap her on the shoulder or anything, and our initial exchange goes something like this. Me: "Excuse me, ma'am. May I please squeak by for just a second?" EL glares at me and moves her cart approximately 2 inches. I wait for a moment, confused, but after I realize that she expects my round potato body to fit through that small gap, I figure if that's all she'll give me, it's no big deal. She'll probably move on soon anyway. So I press myself against the shelves to try and put as much distance between myself and her as possible, out of respect, and manage to squeeze by so I can get to my bin, apologizing profusely as I do so. I pick up a few random items from the bin, then turn back towards the aisles. EL has returned her cart to the exact same position it was in before she moved to let me by, still sitting on her phone and not looking like she'll move anytime soon. I don't think much of it, and resolve to try and work around her as best I can, assuming it must be a pretty important text exchange for her to drop everything in the middle of the aisle to do so. Fortunately, there are other ways to get to the aisles I need, but at this point other customers are glaring at EL because they're trying to get from point A to point B using the most convenient route, which EL has now been blocking for going on 10 minutes, and are being forced to maneuver their carts around the long way. Some of them give pointed stares to me, as if saying that I was the employee. I should say something. So I try to approach the conversation gently and tactfully, standing a little off to the side of the EL's cart and thinking through what I'm going to say to try and keep things civil and not to cause a huge argument. I finally gathered my courage and gently cleared my throat again. Me: "Excuse me." No sooner had the words left my mouth, I hadn't even begun to ask her to kindly move off to the side where there was plenty of room, and she wouldn't have to leave the area or stop her texting for more than a second or two to slide over so people could still get by. I didn't get a chance to say any of that as this woman suddenly snaps at me. I'm shopping. You're working. You're going to have to wait. I just kinda stood there and stared at her in shock for a moment, unsure of what just happened. Her sudden hostility when I had been nothing but polite, and in fact had barely begun to speak, just stunned me into silence. That and the fact that I was trying to work out her logic that her texting or whatever was somehow more important than my job. What? I stammered an apology and hurriedly left the scene, feeling that all too familiar feeling well inside my chest. For some background, I have moderate PTSD from past experiences growing up, and being startled or screamed at is one of my triggers, so when people suddenly snap at me like this, it tends to send my body into flight mode and sends my anxiety skyrocketing, which in turn causes me to cry as a fear response. Oddly enough, if I know I'm in the wrong, this response doesn't happen, as my brain is able to rationalize why I'm being yelled at, but when I'm scolded for apparently no reason, it does send me back to those darker days. I didn't want to burst into tears in the middle of the store, so when I felt myself start to lose control of my emotions, I retreated to the break room to give myself 5 minutes to calm down. When I return to the sales floor, the first thing I notice is the sounds of more yelling, but not at me. I return to my place in the pet department, but as I approach, I see the EL having a heated argument with an older gentleman, MH. I couldn't catch all of their conversation, and some details are fuzzy, but it was going something like this. EL, spoiled youths who think they own the place. MH, I watched the whole thing, madame, and that young lady was nothing but polite and respectful. It's you who thinks they own the place by parking your cart in the middle of the aisle. You're creating an obstacle not only for the poor employee who's just doing her job, but for the other customers as well. If you could just scoot over a smidge. EL, I'm busy. I don't have time for nonsense. These people need to respect my space and move around me. There are other ways they can go. At this point, I'm curious and also flattered that someone thought to speak up for me. So I kinda hide behind a shelf to watch all this go down. MH continues. MA, you had no right to snap at her like that. I bet the poor thing is bawling her eyes out wondering what she did to deserve it. Honestly, if that were me, I would have given you an earful, but since that kind young lady was too polite to do so herself, I'll give you one now. Move your damn cart out of the way. EL was getting red in the face and people were staring. I tried to make myself small so people wouldn't notice I was watching, but when one of my coworkers saw me, they walked over and asked if that was the lady who upset me. I told them it was, and they approached the arguing pair and instructed the lady to leave the store or else they would call the police to have her removed. A mostly empty threat, but it was enough to make her walk off in a huff. I finally came out of hiding and MH saw me and asked if I was okay. I told him I was and thanked him for standing up for me. He told me that after seeing a lot of young people being disrespectful in his time, it was refreshing to see one who had such good manners, and that he wasn't going to stand for the mistreatment of a rare soul like mine. He then politely excused himself and returned to his shopping. I went back to sorting the pet stuff with a spring in my step. Haven't seen the EL again since then, but MH does pop by once in a while, and will sometimes bring his dog, and is more than happy to let me pet her. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and check out these videos for more great content. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you next time.